Welcome to footballgameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, here at the Giants training facility, where today General Manager Dave Gettleman gave his 2019 pre-draft presser. So without further ado, let's take a look at what Gettleman had to say about this year's draft.
Good afternoon. I'd like to begin by thanking our Director of College Scouting, Chris Pettit, his staff, Chris Mara, Kevin Abrams, Mark Collins, Pat Shermer, and the coaches for all their diligence in putting together this year's draft board. I really can't thank them enough. And thank you. With the college draft a week away, we're coming to the second part of what I call the roster building season. Football is the ultimate team game, and while it may be difficult for some to understand, building a roster is not just about collecting talent. Excuse me. It's not just about how fast, strong, or talented a player is, but does he fit athletically, intellectually, and culturally what you're trying to accomplish, which is to win a Super Bowl. Recently, there was an article in USA Today written by Dan Wolken, I think is how you pronounce it, W-O-L-K-E-N. I'd recommend that everybody read it. And what he did was he was discussing two of the college's premier men's basketball programs, Duke and Kentucky. And the article was written after they had been eliminated from this year's NCAA tournament. And really and truly, the final paragraph really put what I believe into a nutshell. And I quote, "As long as Krzyzewski and Calipari are coaching, they're going to get their share of the best recruits every single year because of the pathway they've established to the NBA. But both programs have discovered in the tournament that elite recruiting and good roster construction don't mean the same thing. As Lou Lamoriello most recently said, players win games and teams win championships." Okay? The only major transaction I haven't talked to you guys about since the press conference was about Sterling Shepard, getting him extended. You know, obviously we feel Sterling's a very important part of who we want to be moving forward. You earn this contract, and we're thrilled to have had the ability to get him extended. And finally, guys, this is folks, I shouldn't say guys, I apologize. This is a pre-draft presser. So let's talk about the draft. Okay, pre-draft presser, let's talk about the draft and let the games begin.
You said this is a really strong draft. What is it about the draft in particular that makes you think that and believe that?
Well, frankly, you know, we've pretty much set the board, Jordan. You know, we're tweaking it a little bit here, a little bit there. The scouts went home. I sent them home for the holiday, and it gives me a chance to, you know, do some work on my own, do some additional work. So the board's really basically set. And I'm looking at a board, and we have more players rated as first, second, or third, in the first, second, third, and fourth round values than I've had in any draft I've ever. And this is my 8th draft as a GM. No, 7th. Yeah, I can count 7th. Okay, so in terms of the volume of players on the board, this is the thickest.
Is selecting a quarterback a priority for you during this draft?
I think that the priority is to select the best players. You know, really, and I know that sounds silly, but you know, last year again, we couldn't pass up on Saquon. He was the best player in the draft. You can't do that. You listen. You know, we've had this conversation before. You know, Eli's closer to 40 than he is to 25. I think we can all do the math. You know, 40 take away 38. We can do that. But at the end of the day, we're going to take the best players.
Dave, last year Saquon had to pass. Anybody at number 2 had to pass that gold jacket test you always talk about.
Right.
At number 6, do you need a gold jacket guy, or is that too far from 2?
For me, you're kind of riding on the edge. You know, very frankly, kind of riding on the edge. I think that, you know, hey, listen, there are gold jacket guys that never get drafted. You know, so that stuff happens. But, you know, it's still It's still about the best, the guy you could, it's still about value. Give you the most value at that spot. And you, again, you start reaching for need and you have these, you do that, you get into trouble. You can never have too many good players at one position.
Dave, is it important to look
I'm sorry?
Is it important to look at every selection you guys have? You have 12 picks. So you look at it in terms of, I have a chance to get 12 starters on my roster, or do you take the approach of first round talent, seventh round talent?
Listen, if we got 12 starters out of this draft, man, I have a hell of a time on Cape Cod. But, you know, all kidding aside, you know, I've told you before that what you're looking to do, you know, having 12 picks is crazy. You know, it's a lot of picks. So one of the things I've talked about is you don't want to draft a player that you're going to cut. You know, every guy you draft, theoretically, there's a reason you're drafting him. There's a reason he should make your club. First, second, third round draft picks, at the very least, you're looking for a big rotational player. Okay, so, you know, everybody talks about, you know, the way the league is going now, 65, 70% of the time, you got your defensive sub package on. So you can easily make the argument that your nickel, corner, is a starter. You can make that argument. Your third wide is a starter. You can make that argument. So that's what you're looking for, first, second, third round. Guys that can walk on the field and help you win now. Anything after that's a huge bonus. If you know, hey, listen, earlier, David Deal was a 5th round draft pick, you know, and a 10 or 11 year starter. You know, so that's what you're looking for.
Dave, you mentioned that rounds 1 through 4. Does that make it, give you a little bit more flexibility if you want to move around the draft board?
Absolutely, Patty. Absolutely. It's you know, I mean, obviously, every position is different. There are some positions that are thick throughout, you know, from the first round all the way down. There are some positions where there's bupkis early, and then all of a sudden it gets real thick. Then there are some positions where thick, nothing thick. It varies. So obviously, when your turn's coming up, you're going to take a look, especially if you have a number of guys that you can talk about on that are of equal value at different positions. You know, so it does make a difference.
You said in the past that for a franchise quarterback, you can't guy that you love because it's such an important position.
Right.
Does that also apply to the second, first round pick? Because there could be a guy that you like, but the value is there. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you see yourself not being in love with a guy but using that second pick on him, or is that too important a position?
With as heavy as this draft is, to answer that question, I'd be shocked if there'd be somebody, if we're at 17, I'd be very surprised if there was someone there I didn't like.
Somebody that you didn't like, you think there will be someone?
Yes, I'm saying I'd be surprised if there was someone there that I did not like. I'd be shocked.
But could it be a guy that you are, that you are in love with, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Are you talking about quarterback in that specifically? if
Who
that's-
knows, Paul?
No, when you said at 17, you'd be shocked if there's someone that you didn't.
A player,
like.
you know, an NFL
A
player.
player, but
Oh,
you're not a quarterback.
No, I'm not. I didn't
It
say
could be a quarterback. but
Could
you're
be.
not a player, yeah.
Could be a corner, could be a wide receiver, you know, it could be a sports writer.
What I meant with that question was
All right,
that,
go ahead. What do you mean?
that a quarterback is so important and you don't want to force it. But if he's sitting there at 17, the value might be just too good.
You know, what the value might be too good for what?
To pass up. It might be a guy that you don't love, a quarterback that you don't love, but you've got him rated high.
Listen, if we got a quarterback rated in the first round, we love him.
Okay.
You know, if that answers your question. Did I finally get there?
Yeah, sort of.
Okay.
Dave, is there a lot of what ifs, what your talent that you like? Is there a guessing game, and is that dangerous to say, well, what if we expect this team to pick this guy, but they don't?
You know, it's so crazy now that you just, you know, you read all the information. You got 85 mock drafts, and you know, you got guys, you know, there's probably 20 guys that are in everybody's first round. Okay, history tells you can bet the ranch those guys are gonna go, all right? But you can't, times have changed, okay? I'll tell you this story. My very first draft, I'm an intern with the Buffalo Bills. Norm Paulin just passed away. Calls me into his office, and he's got a legal pad, and at that time there were 26 teams, I think. That would have been 87 draft. Steve, how many teams were there in 87? Come on.
28.
You were 28? 28, okay, so he's got a legal pad with 28 teams and 28 names. And he turns it around and gives it to me, he said, Dave, take a look. And so I'm looking and, whatever. And he says, that's the draft. He had 26 of the 28, okay? But that's when people kibitzed with each other at the phones, and it wasn't just a whole series of smoke screens and lies and whatever. So, at the end of the day, you can't count on teams they're gonna take this guy and that, this team's gonna take that guy. You can't count on it. So you just gotta relax, and, it's just a process, is all it is. And you just relax and see what happens.
Given the depth, is there a better chance this year, would you say, of marrying value with the position of need, or is it,
No, there is, because it's about volume. So to answer your question, yes.
Dave, you said that if you had a quarterback with a first-round grade, that means that you love him. I'm curious if there are traits that help a quarterback lead to that level of a grade, in your opinion, or what you've looking for?
Well, a lot of it's, the physical, obviously, it's the physical ability to play the game. But, one of the things that I really believe is, and, this is not taking a shot at anybody, so don't twist my words, please. It's being the quarterback of a team in this kind of a market is a load, is a mental load. And you've got to really vet out the backgrounds of these guys. Okay, this is just like, being the head coach of this team is a load. Being the quarterback's a load too. And it's more than just it's more than just looking at a guy's physical talent. It's about his makeup. I mean, hey, listen, a lot of you guys were here Eli's first year. Okay, so he starts the last 9 games of the year. And there are a couple games early on. You guys remember the Baltimore game? What was he, 4 for 15? Oh.
0 passer rate.
Exactly, something like that. Let me tell you something. So he's there, and then we're playing Dallas in the last game of the year. We're on the 6-yard line going in. We have no timeouts. There's 12 seconds left in the game, and he has the Colognes to audible to a draw. And if we don't score, we lose the game. You got to have a mental toughness about you to play the position here in New York. Really play the position anyway. So that's a big piece of it, and it's important. And if you folks don't think it is, then you need to rethink it.
Dave, obviously at 17 and 95 was a big part of the return in the Odell trade. Just any extra pressure knowing that those guys are going to be judged as part of that trade?
No, not for me. And I don't mean to make light of it, but no. I mean, it's we're going to get good players with those 2 picks.
Dave, you talked about the what
You've got 12 picks, you've got 2 in the first round, and obviously you want to get every draft right. But does the 12 picks, does the fact that you've talked about all the value at the top of this draft, does that put extra importance or extra pressure on you guys getting this one right?
No, there's pressure getting it right every year. Every year. Came in last year, we had 5 picks. That's all we had. All right, and there's no less pressure with 12 than, or no more pressure with 12 than there was 5. But again, it doesn't make a difference what job you have. You've got pressure, you've got deadlines, and there are people that look at you, and I'm gonna look at you and say, how do you do that? You know, the game ends at, you know, you got a 4:25 start. Game ends at 7:15, and you better get your crap in about 25 minutes, and you ain't got time. And oh, by the way, the game just ended, and you gotta run down and get interviews. You guys got pressure, but it's what you do. So you just kind of roll with it. Well, that's kind of what I do.
Dave,
So I don't feel that pressure.
in scouting these quarterbacks and their mental toughness, vetting their backgrounds, is it valuable for them to have handled adversity in the past so you can see how they've handled it?
You know, Pat,
And is off the field as important as on?
Exactly, Pat. You know, it's interesting you say that. It's a hell of a question. You know, I was talking about it with Pat back in late in the fall. We were having a conversation about it, and you know, he said, you know, there's a lot of guys that have never had adversity, and you will have adversity up here. I don't care who you are. I don't care how great a player you are. I could sit down over any year and you give me any Pro Bowl player, and I can make you a 25, 30 snap tape that he will look like, you gotta be kidding me, he's getting paid that kind of money. You gotta be kidding me, he went to the Pro Bowl. And then of course I'll make you the other 25 snap tape where you're gonna say, oh my God, you know. So, you know, everybody has adversity, every one of them. It's who's mentally tough enough to say, okay, it happened once, it's not happening again. And with a lot of these guys, it's a very legitimate question. You have to really, and some you've got to dig so deep to see where they've had adversity. It's painful.
Do you need,
But it's part of the evaluation.
Dave, do you need a defensive playmaker in this draft, a priority also?
Well, I think that, you know, we listen, you guys sat there and watched it. We had, you know, we went 4-4 the second half of the year, and we had 3 games. If we make a stop, we're 7-1. You know, so, you know, obviously, you know, you can't have too many playmakers. I've always been a big believer, you talk about roster construction, I've always been a big believer that if you look at the great defenses, they got a lead dog at every level, you know, like a legitimate playmaker at every level of their defense. So yeah, we do need, you know, I said it in the postseason presser, and I'll say it again, Barry, we gotta get some defensive players.
Dave, not to be flippant, but do you have a lead dog at any level on your defense right now?
Ogletree, Alec, you know, the 2 safeties we brought in, you know, Jabril and Antoine. You know, Antoine's been a lead dog. You know, we're getting there. We're getting there.
Up front is where you think it's...
Well, you know, hey, listen, we're thrilled with BJ, we're thrilled with Dalvin. You know, we got to keep adding to that mix. You know, the young kid, you know, and the young guys on the outside. Lorenzo made a lot of strides last year. You know, we're getting there. You know, it doesn't happen overnight.
Dave, are you a better?
You did have a quarterback that you rated.
I'm sorry?
You did have a quarterback that you rated in the first round. Obviously, we don't know. Is there any reason why you would wait to the second pick to take him? Isn't that a position that's so important that you can't afford to wait that long? Assuming you have one rated in the first round, don't you have to take that with the first pick?
Depends upon who's there. Depends upon who's available. Okay? You would have said that to me last year, I would have given you the same answer, and you would have seen what happened. You know, you saw what happened. We took Saquon.
Dave, I noticed you talked about lead dogs on defense, and you mentioned safety, inside linebacker. Is it important to have that battery going from D tackle to center to quarterback to running back be where you want your lead dogs at before you build outside?
I don't know that. You know, I don't think football is any different from any other of the other 3 major sports. Strength up the middle is critical. You know, but you know, your lead dog can be, you know, can be an outside linebacker. It could be, you know, an outside pass rusher. You know, it's you know, listen, what you want is talent. It's really what you want. It doesn't make a difference what position it comes from.
Dave, you have a pick in every round, but it's 37 and
It's a big
yeah.
Uzi.
So is that a place where you think it's going to be hard to watch 60 good players come off the board? So
Yes, it is.
is that a place where you?
It won't be fun. It won't be fun.
Dave, you've been watching film on these kids coming out for a long time. What position group has impressed you the most?
The wides are real thick. The wides, the offensive tackles, thick. Your secondary's thick, thankfully.
Corners, Dave, or?
Corners and safeties.
Corners and safeties?
Corners and safeties. When I say thick, I'm talking up and down the draft, up and down the board, rounds 1 through 7. There's a lot of guys, so those positions.
When you're looking at small college players,
What's that?
You talked earlier about the what ifs. and-
Wait a minute, Tom. Say it again.
You talked earlier about what ifs and sort of figuring out, not wasting your time worrying about what other teams are gonna be doing. And it seems like this is a pretty unique situation where if the team with the #1 overall pick goes in one direction, all of a sudden, a first-round pick that you may have liked from last year could be available. How does that complicate things? How does that change the dynamic of what you're gonna be doing a week from today?
We're gonna sit there and see what's cooking at 6, and then we'll go from there. And we'll go from there.
Have you had any conversations with the Cardinals?
I'm not going there.
Dave, you know for a fact that at number 6, let's say, right, you're gonna pick a guy that either is gonna be graded 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or let's say 7 or 8, and that's it, you know what I mean? Because there's only 5 guys that can go ahead of you.
Right, yeah, you've done the math.
Yes.
Look at that. I knew you were more just another pretty baseball.
Yes, well, it's depending on your fingers,
Fingers,
that's as
yeah.
far as I go. But, you know what I'm saying, as far as, the guy you pick is gonna be either rated higher or right about there, but not really much lower at all.
No.
Because you don't have to.
No,
And you're not gonna force that for any position at all?
no, you can't.
You know?
You're up at 6.
So if you don't have a quarterback in the top 6, you're just not taking them. I mean, you willing to say that right now?
I'm just telling you, I'm not gonna force a pick. You can't draft for need. You'll get screwed every time. You'll make a mistake.
And the quarterback, the quarterback's not a little special category where you put an asterisk and say, well, sometimes.
No, it's not. Oh, not a little special category.
Dave, when you look at this draft, and the defensive players in particular,
Players just a 3, 4, 6, 8, do you see a spot this year where there's a drop off? Is it
I know,
7, 9, 6, 5?
Jordan, it's a really good draft. It's not a, listen, I fully expect, if nothing happens, if we don't move, sitting at 17, we're gonna get a really good player. It's not gonna panic and, it's gonna be a good player there, guys. I don't wanna sound arrogant.
Dave, you had said last year that you knew, in hindsight, you knew Saquon was your guy. You waited. You
Well,
personally, if not the organization, you personally. Do you have your guy right now when you're sitting there hoping that he's at 6 and that's when you'll run that card up?
We gotta finish doing the board. I told you, we're still screwing around.
But in your mind.
What's
in your
that?
mind. I'm not talking the evaluation. of what
I
you
have an
take.
open mind. I have an open mind,
Did you have an open mind last year?
Oh, I sure did. I sure did.
Any gold jacket guys in this draft?
Oh, yeah. There's a couple. There's a couple. I don't want to put a number on it. There's some guys. I mean, this is a draft that's been well ballyhooed. How's that for a word, guys? Well ballyhooed about the depth and the volume of players, and it's legit.
What do you think of the quarterback class this year?
It's good. It's a good quarterback class.
Good?
Yeah.
Thick?
What's that?
Thick?
Yeah, kinda.
Kind of thick?
Yeah.
Better than last year?
What's that?
Better than last year?
I'm not going there. Come on now.
Dave, let's put it this way. Ernie Corsi always says you draft quarterbacks to win Super Bowls.
Right.
Any quarterbacks in this class who you think are Super Bowl caliber guys that you can win titles with?
There's some really good quarterbacks in this draft, yes.
Dave, how would you, knowing that Eli's closer to 40 than he is 25, how would you characterize the level of urgency to land a franchise quarterback now?
Steve, you know what? I'm gonna tell you this. If you put a lot of pressure on it, you're gonna make a mistake. So if you're asking me how urgent do I feel that we need to do this, I'm not gonna put a level on that, Steve. I'm not. I'm gonna, listen, you know, doing this, you let the draft come to you. And that's what you do. You know, and I feel, I'm so, you know, I feel, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, we went into last season believing that Eli still had plenty left, and he proved it then. So, you know, just see how it goes. See how
What about the level of urgency to get
We'll
to
take a couple
the
more.
Kansas City model?
What's that? Well, you know, and you know, I said the Kansas City model, people have been doing it for years. It's just the most recent one. How about the Green Bay model? You know, Aaron Rodgers falling to him while I had Brett Favre. You know, that, you know, he sat for 2.5 years, I think, or 3 years. You know, that's what you'd like to do. Listen, Eli is a pro's pro, and you guys know that. Okay, he is a pro's pro, and to get a quarterback in here and to allow him to learn at the feet, it'd be a sweet deal. Kyle's working on that right now. Don't forget about Kyle now. He's working on that right now. So, I mean, you know, yes, you'd like to, you'd prefer that to be the situation. You'd hate to throw a guy in, take a young kid and just throw him in. It's not easy.
As you and still win in the future, do you feel you have the ability this year to start?
Well, you know, Barry, I just, you know, we won 2 more games than the team did the year before. And you had all those games with, you know, that we lost by a point, 2 points. I mean, you know, we lost 8 games by a touchdown or less. You know, so the NFL is tight. And a few more plays get you over the top, and now you're winning more games, right? So, yes.
You guys have hit on a lot of the small college guys. What do you have to see on film that kind of stands out to you? Because that's probably the tougher thing to do, is find that guy and judge whether or not he can play up to this level.
Well, the biggest thing you have to do is, you know, so a million years ago, I'm scouting and I'm at Kutztown State and I'm looking at John Mobley. And, you know, you know, this is like in October, I finally get there and all the scouts there. Hey, have you been to Kutztown? Have you been to Kutztown? It started in August, and I finally said, is this guy Superman? Or, you know, what do we got here? So I went to, you know, I watched John play, and the bottom line is, so I'm in Kutztown, so the closest Division I school is Penn State. So you have to ask yourself the question, I said, tell the scouts this all the time, remind them, if I'm watching John Mobley, can I picture him starting at Penn State? That's the litmus test. And, you know, so when scouts talk about, you know, Division II, 1AA, 2, 3, that's the litmus test. Will he start at, you know, a big Division I program? And they all go to Division I programs, so they should be able to answer that question.
Dave, what you said
Last one, guys.
earlier about the urgency part of it, you let the draft come to you. I would imagine that means not necessarily not be aggressive when you need to be aggressive in the draft, right? I mean, it's not like, you're not gonna sit in a spot because you don't feel urgency, but if you see something, as you told us
I've
last
traded,
year,
you know, look at my history, I've traded up a number of times, down to Carolina. You know, last year we just, you know, kinda had to sit, I only had the 5 picks. And I was not gonna trade, I was not gonna take picks from this year's draft to move up in last year's draft. So, you know, we're gonna do what we need to. you know, so are you asking me, am I gonna move around the board?
No,
Very
you said
possible.
earlier you were going to, but in terms of the answer to the urgency, you said we were gonna let things come to us. I just wanted to get clarification, the idea that you weren't saying you were just gonna sit there with all your picks and wait for guys to fall.
No,
You
there-
may be aggressive if the situation.
If the situation calls for it, there's a guy there that, you know, we feel could really help us, and it's a few picks in front, and we're not we're not comfortable with the teams in front, that he'll follow us. If we feel the need, we'll make the move. I'm not afraid to do that.
You
Because
say
remember,
the
we've got 12.
You say the 12 picks is crazy though? Crazy
It's a lot of
number,
picks.
And
Never
you
had
said,
this.
and you said the first 4 rounds are kind of loaded, right? Or more than you ever seen. So would your preference be to move some of those, because you have a lot of picks at the back, move some of those and get more picks in those first 4?
You may. Jordan, it's possible. Anything's possible.
Including taking from next year's draft this year? You said you wouldn't do it last year to this year. Will you do it this year to next year?
Maybe.
Okay.
Dave, when you mentioned wides before, did you mean wide receiver as far as the position?
Yeah, when I say
What
what
are you talking
wides.
about?
Dave, if I could just ask one more, how does the dynamic change when you have 2 first-round picks? I don't even know, have you ever had that?
No, it's fun. I'm excited about it. No, it's really weird. Because it means that after you take that first pick, you can't get dinner. No, it's I'm excited about it, you know, because especially now, you know, you turn around and that means you got 2 guys, you're gonna draft 2 guys that you'll have for 5 years, which is really, you know, I mean, really big help in this day and age with the cap. So I'm just, I'm excited about it. You know, there's so many possibilities that it gives you so many options that, you know, I'm looking forward to Thursday, a week from today.
All right, appreciate that. So that's a wrap here from the Giants training facility. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Be sure to follow me on all of my social media accounts. And don't forget to check out and subscribe to the Football Game Plan Network located at youtube.com/footballgameplan.